It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon at Mercy Valley Hospital, or at least as quiet as a hospital could ever be. The rhythmic beeping of monitors and the shuffle of nurses filled the air, creating a hum of controlled chaos. Among the flurry of activity, one nurse stood out, not for her loud presence, but for the quiet determination etched across her face. Her name was Claire Bennett. To her patients, she wasn't just another nurse in scrubs. She was a lifeline, a steady hand in their moments of fear. But today, Claire's world was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. The day had started like any other. Claire clocked in at 7 a.m. sharp, tying her hair back and slipping into her well-worn sneakers, ready to face another 12-hour shift. She was assigned to the ICU, a ward where life and death often balanced on a razor's edge. Claire thrived here not because it was easy, but because she believed in fighting for every heartbeat, every breath. Her colleagues often joked that she had the stamina of 10 people and the heart of an angel. But not everyone appreciated her unwavering dedication. It was around noon when everything spiraled out of control. A young man named Michael was rushed into the ICU after a severe car accident. He was barely conscious, his injuries critical, and time was running out. Claire took charge without hesitation, her hand steady as she directed the team to stabilize him. But when the attending physician ordered them to stop, citing hospital policy, and claiming the situation was beyond saving, Claire refused to back down. Her voice, firm but trembling with emotion, echoed in the sterile room. "He's still fighting. We can't give up on him now." Her decision wasn't driven by recklessness. It was driven by instinct, by the promise she made to herself years ago to never let bureaucracy overshadow humanity. Ignoring the disapproving stares of some colleagues, Claire did what she believed was right. She administered a treatment the doctor had dismissed, a move that brought Michael back from the brink. The monitors steadied, his pulse grew stronger, and for a brief moment, relief washed over her. She had saved a life. But that relief was short-lived. By the end of her shift, Claire was called into a meeting with hospital administrators. The doctor she had defied was there, his expression cold and unyielding. The conversation was short and brutal. She was accused of insubordination, of putting the hospital at risk, and of violating protocol. Her defense, that she had acted in the patient's best interest, fell on deaf ears. By the time she walked out of that room, Claire was no longer Nurse Bennett. She was simply Claire, stripped of her badge, her job, and a part of her identity. News of her firing spread quickly among her colleagues. Some whispered words of support, but most stayed silent, unwilling to risk their own positions. Claire left the hospital that evening feeling defeated, carrying a box of her belongings and the weight of uncertainty. She had spent years building her career, pouring her heart into every patient she treated. And now, in the blink of an eye, it was gone. As she sat in her car, staring blankly at the dashboard, doubt crept in. Had she done the right thing? Was saving one life worth losing everything she had worked for? The memory of Michael's face, pale but alive, flashed through her mind. She knew the answer, but the pain of what she'd lost was hard to ignore. Days turned into weeks, and Claire found herself grappling with her new reality. Job applications went unanswered, and her savings dwindled. She avoided calls from well-meaning friends, unable to face their pity. The fire that once drove her seemed dimmed, replaced by a gnawing sense of failure. But then something unexpected happened. One rainy evening, as Claire sat in her tiny apartment, a knock at the door startled her. She wasn't expecting anyone. Reluctantly, she opened it, and there he was, Michael. The man whose life she had fought so hard to save stood before her, a bouquet of sunflowers in his hands and gratitude shining in his eyes. He was walking, talking, and alive, a living testament to the choice that had cost her everything. "I hope I'm not intruding," Michael said, his voice soft but sincere. "I just, I needed to find you. To thank you." Claire was stunned. She invited him in, and as they sat across from each other in her modest living room, Michael began to tell her how that fateful day had changed his life. He spoke about his family, who had almost lost him, and the dreams he now had for the future, all because she had refused to give up. He wasn't just alive. He was thriving, and he owed it all to her. But as they talked, Michael revealed something else, something that sent a ripple of surprise through Claire's already shaken world. He hadn't come alone. Someone else had helped him track her down, a person Claire never expected to hear from again. And that person had a message that could change everything, not just for Claire, but for anyone who had ever doubted the power of standing up for what's right. Before Claire could ask more, another knock echoed through the apartment, louder this time. Michael's expression turned into a knowing smile. "I think you should get that," he said. Claire's heart raced as she walked to the door, her mind spinning with questions. Who could it be? What could they possibly want? And how was this connected to her act of defiance at the hospital? She reached for the doorknob, her hands trembling, and opened it to find. And that's where this story truly begins. What happened next is a tale of redemption, courage, and the unexpected twists that life throws our way. Stay tuned because you won't want to miss what unfolds next. Claire's breath caught as she opened the door. Standing there was a man she recognized immediately, though she hadn't seen him in years. His sharp suit and confident posture were a stark contrast to the quiet life he had lived when she'd known him. It was Dr. Daniel Harper, a former mentor and one of the few people she had ever truly looked up to during her nursing career. Daniel had left the hospital years ago under mysterious circumstances, and though they hadn't kept in touch, his sudden appearance now felt like a thread tying the past to the present. "Claire," he said with a soft smile, "it's been a long time." Her mind raced. What was Daniel doing here? How did he know about Michael? And more importantly, why now? She stepped aside to let him in, her voice finally catching up to her thoughts. "Dr. Harper, I mean Daniel, what are you doing here?" Daniel glanced at Michael, then back at Claire. "We'll get to that. But first, I need to say this. You were right to do what you did. Saving Michael was the right call, no matter what anyone says." Claire felt her chest tighten at his words. For weeks, she had been replaying the incident in her mind, questioning everything. Hearing those words, especially from someone like Daniel, was a validation she didn't realize she needed. But his tone carried something heavier, a sense that there was more to this visit than just encouragement. As the three of them sat down, Daniel began to explain. "I've been keeping an eye on Mercy Valley, even from a distance. When I heard about what happened to you, I wasn't surprised. That hospital has always had a way of punishing people who don't fall in line. It's why I left." Claire frowned, memories of Daniel's sudden resignation flashing through her mind. At the time, rumors had swirled about him clashing with administration, but no one had known the full story. Now it seemed she was about to find out. "They prioritized numbers over patients," Daniel continued. "It's not about saving lives, it's about saving face. And anyone who dares to challenge that gets silenced. I learned that the hard way when I tried to expose some of their practices." Claire leaned forward, her heart pounding. "What are you saying, Daniel? That this wasn't just about me going against protocol?" Daniel nodded grimly. "Exactly. What you did put a spotlight on their flaws, on their unwillingness to put patients first. Firing you wasn't just about punishment, it was about making an example out of you, warning others not to step out of line. But there's more. I've been gathering evidence for years, evidence that shows just how deep their corruption runs. Michael, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke up. "That's why I'm here too. I owe you my life, Claire, and I couldn't just walk away knowing what you're going through. I want to help." Claire looked at them both, her mind reeling. On one hand, she felt a surge of anger at the injustice she had faced. On the other, a deep fear crept in. Taking on a hospital as powerful as Mercy Valley wasn't just risky. It could destroy her completely. But then she thought about all the patients she had cared for over the years, the ones who had looked at her with trust in their eyes, believing she would fight for them. Could she really walk away now? As if sensing her hesitation, Daniel reached into his bag and pulled out a thick folder. He placed it on the table between them. "This is everything I've collected. Records of patients turned away for financial reasons, treatments denied to save costs, and decisions made to protect the hospital's image instead of lives. And now, with what they did to you, we have a chance to expose the truth." Claire's hands shook as she picked up the folder, flipping through pages of reports, emails, and patient files. Each piece of evidence was a stark reminder of the reality she had been a part of, the very system she had unknowingly upheld by staying silent. Her stomach churned, a mix of anger and determination rising within her. "But what happens if we fail?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if they bury this, and we lose everything?" Daniel's gaze softened, and he leaned forward, his voice steady. "Claire, you've already lost so much. They took your job, your livelihood, and tried to strip you of your purpose. But you still have something they can't take, your integrity. And that's worth fighting for." Michael chimed in, his tone resolute. "And you're not alone in this. Whatever it takes, I'm with you. You saved me, and now it's my turn to stand by you." Claire looked at them both, her heart heavy but her resolve growing. The weight of the decision was enormous, but for the first time in weeks, she didn't feel alone. If there was even a chance to make things right, to stand up for the countless patients who had been failed by the system, she had to take it. As the night wore on, the three of them began to lay out a plan. They would reach out to a journalist Daniel trusted, someone who had experience exposing corruption in powerful institutions. They would go through the evidence meticulously, ensuring every detail was irrefutable. And most importantly, they would prepare for the backlash, because it was coming. By the time Daniel and Michael left, Claire felt a spark of hope she hadn't felt in weeks. The road ahead would be treacherous, but for the first time, she felt like she was moving towards something bigger than herself. But as she locked the door behind them and turned off the lights, a nagging thought lingered in the back of her mind. Mercy Valley wasn't going to go down without a fight. And if they knew what she was planning, they wouldn't just sit idly by. Little did Claire know, the storm was closer than she thought. As she drifted off to sleep that night, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A message flashed across the screen from an unknown number. "Stop while you still can. This is your only warning." The message on Claire's phone felt like a punch to the gut. She stared at the screen, her heart pounding as her mind raced with questions. Who had sent it? How did they know what she was planning? Was this just a scare tactic, or was the danger real? Her instinct told her it was the latter. Mercy Valley had too much to lose if the truth came out, and they clearly weren't above intimidation. Claire's first thought was to call Daniel, but she stopped herself. It was late, and she didn't want to seem panicked. Instead, she took a deep breath, locked her doors, and double-checked her windows before heading to bed. Sleep didn't come easily. Every creak of the apartment and shadow on the wall made her nerves spike, and when the sun finally rose, she felt more exhausted than ever. The next morning, Daniel and Michael came over, their faces grim as Claire showed them the message. Daniel's jaw tightened as he read it. and he set the phone down carefully on the table. "This proves one thing," he said. "They're scared. That means we're on to something big." Michael looked uneasy. "But it also means they're watching us. What if they try something worse?" Claire knew Michael was right. The message wasn't just a warning. It was a reminder of the power Mercy Valley held. But instead of fear, it fueled something else inside her: determination. She was done letting them control her, done being silenced. They could try to intimidate her all they wanted, but she wasn't going to back down now. Daniel suggested they move quickly. They finalized their plan to meet the journalist he had contacted, a woman named Grace Porter, who had a reputation for taking on powerful institutions and winning. Grace agreed to meet them at a quiet cafe later that afternoon, and the three of them spent the rest of the morning organizing the evidence into a concise, compelling case. When they arrived at the cafe, Grace was already waiting, her sharp eyes scanning the room as they approached. She was calm, professional, and immediately put them at ease. As they laid out the evidence, Grace's expression shifted from intrigue to outrage. "This is big," she said, flipping through the pages. "If we can verify everything, this will blow the lid off Mercy Valley's operations." For the first time, Claire felt like they had a real chance. Grace assured them she'd handle the investigation carefully, protecting their identities as much as possible while working to expose the truth. But just as they were wrapping up, Grace's phone buzzed with an alert. She glanced at it and frowned. "What's wrong?" Claire asked, her stomach tightening. Grace hesitated before showing them the screen. A breaking news article flashed across it. "Mercy Valley Hospital employee accused of unauthorized medical actions. Investigation underway." Below the headline was a picture of Claire, her face plastered alongside damning accusations. The hospital had launched a smear campaign against her, painting her as reckless and irresponsible. It was clear they were trying to discredit her before the truth could come out. Claire's hands trembled as she read the article, but Daniel placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "This is exactly what they want," he said. "To scare you, to make you doubt yourself. But we know the truth, and so will everyone else." Grace nodded. "If anything, this only makes your case stronger. It shows how far they're willing to go to protect themselves. We'll move fast, but we need to stay smart." The next few days were a whirlwind. Grace worked tirelessly, cross-referencing the evidence and reaching out to former employees and patients who could corroborate Claire's story. Meanwhile, Claire braced herself for the fallout from the smear campaign. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages, some supportive, others hateful. She avoided social media, knowing it would only make things worse. Then, just as everything seemed to be reaching a breaking point, Grace called with news. "We're going public," she said. "The story's airtight, and I've got several outlets ready to run it. But Claire, I need you to decide. Do you want to go on record? It'll mean putting yourself in the spotlight, for better or worse." Claire didn't hesitate. "I'll do it," she said. "If it means exposing the truth, I'm all in." The story broke the next morning. Headlines across the country detailed the corruption at Mercy Valley, backed by mountains of evidence and first-hand accounts. Claire's interview was the centerpiece, her courage in defying the hospital's orders and standing up for what was right earning her widespread praise. The response was overwhelming. Patients shared their own stories of being mistreated or ignored, and the outcry against the hospital grew louder with each passing hour. Mercy Valley released a statement denying the allegations, but it was too late. The evidence was undeniable, and an independent investigation was launched almost immediately. Within weeks, several top executives were placed on leave, and new regulations were introduced to ensure patients were prioritized over profits. For Claire, life didn't return to normal overnight. She still faced scrutiny and backlash, but for every hateful comment, there were 10 messages of gratitude and support. Michael remained by her side, a constant reminder of why she had fought so hard in the first place. Daniel, too, became a steadfast ally, helping her navigate the chaos while working to rebuild her career. One evening, as Claire sat in her living room surrounded by letters from strangers thanking her for her bravery, she realized something. Losing her job had felt like the end of her world, but it had been the beginning of something much bigger. She hadn't just saved one life. She had sparked a change that would save countless others. And in that moment, she knew it had all been worth it.